Alright people, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification. That way you'll know when I upload the next video and you'll be supporting my channel. Follow me on Twitter. Every time I upload a new video, I'll be tweeting. Ladies and gentlemen, and this is Campfire Stories Bradley / Gloves by the channel Mikeburnfire. Not all campfire stories are fun ones. Wait a minute, what? This is something going to be dark? Alright. Yeah, I've been reacting to Mikeburnfire for past few days now, right? And all these stories are awesome, right? One of those videos was about New Vegas game they was playing. That knowing an actual, army guy playing a game is always fun, especially something like New Vegas. But yeah, he's most of the videos that I react to him, I guess, is about the campfire stories, which is really awesome. You see certain stories about army here and there in some movies and shit, but that's always going to be exaggerated or even watered down when need to be. Real campfire story by the real people who lived in some boot camps or things like that is just awesome. So let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, so I know which type of videos to react to more, I guess. Check out the Rick Sunday, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards for place, everything cards in, yeah, that's what it.
Were you also required to clear a Bradley at one point? Why would they call you a small arms repairman?
Because technically...
Because technically a Bradley is small arms?
Yeah, technically, as far as the army is concerned, the M242 chain gun on the front of a Bradley is considered small arms.
Good grief.
So are 155mm howitzers.
I don't know how much larger small guns can get.
I think their logic behind it was, well, it's small enough that a person could theoretically move it, so it must be small arms.
Oh, the truck broke down. Get our small arms repairman in over here.
Yeah, a 6-cylinder engine is kind of like a gun. I would tell the story about me having to clear the Bradley, but it is a long story and it kind of makes me really angry. So one night
Alright, so Bradley is some kind of an armored vehicle which has a gun on top of it. If I were to think that why would they, first of all, knowing so far all the stories I heard from this guy, is basically they were incompetent, but let's ignore that. Maybe they called him to repair, this thing and calling that gun basically small arms because maybe it mimicked small arms weapon, right? It was big guns, but it was still like, your average assault rifle or battle rifle type of thing, but it was in big size. If something is way too big and it has way too much engineering components into it, maybe you need more of a specialized mechanic or engineer to repair it because it has too many mechanism inside of it. But if it just mimics your, normal battle rifle, maybe they just think, oh, it's just like, small arms guy could repair it. So yeah. But why would they ask for him to repair a car if it breaks down? I don't know.
I'm sleeping in my barracks room in Iraq. Someone comes and starts pounding on my door, wakes me up. Specialist, get up, get up. There's someone on the phone for you. Alright, fine. So I go answer the phone. And it's somebody from one of the other companies, and they're telling me, we need you to come over to this gate over here and clear Bradley. What do you mean clear Bradley? Well, we need you to come make sure that the main gun on this Bradley is cleared. I mean, I can do that theoretically. I haven't worked on one since I was in, like, job training, but alright, where's the gunner? Well, he's gone. Where's the driver? He's gone too. Where's the tank commander? He is also gone.
Where was everybody? Out to lunch?
When they said gone, I assumed they meant that everybody in this Bradley had been killed and they had towed it back to the gate and that they needed me to come clear it before they brought it into the base, because you can't just be driving a armored vehicle around with a 25mm chain gun loaded on it through a base with people in it.
Why not?
Somebody would be stupid and be like, look, I'm a gunner, haha, and then they would just rip 12 rounds through the side of a building.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
So the next day I found out from somebody else that what had happened is some of the people on gate guard had noticed that there was just a Bradley driving up and down one of the main routes by itself with no other vehicles with it.
That's abnormal. They're normally part of a caravan, right?
Yeah, they're normally part of a convoy. Why is this Bradley driving around by itself? So they get in a Humvee, they drive out to there, and they find this Bradley. They have to get in its way because it keeps trying to drive away.
That's so weird.
They can't get a hold of him on any radio frequencies. So they basically just park right in front of it and flag him down and take like 20 minutes to coax this driver out of the vehicle, reassuring him that yes, in fact, they are US soldiers and no, they're not going to try and kill him the moment he gets out of the vehicle.
I'm still not sure why he was driving around by himself.
Oh, I'll get to that. What happened was this Bradley was part of a armored vehicle convoy
Oh, no.
that had driven through 5 different areas of operation. And this Bradley got hit with an IED. Everybody was a little shooken up, but they were okay. So they moved Bradley to a different spot in the convoy, kept going. It got hit with another IED.
What the fuck?
So they moved it to another spot in the convoy.
You're just rearranging deck chairs in the Titanic. You're
And it got hit with another IED.
It's
What
still
luck?
dead.
At this point, this Bradley has been hit with 3 IEDs now. The gunner and the tank commander of this Bradley suddenly decide, you know what? Fuck this, I'm done being in this Bradley. So they get out of the Bradley and leave the driver, who is a 19-year-old kid and has never been outside the wire in Iraq before, in the
Okay.
vehicle by himself. And then they start the convoy back up.
I mean, that could be the reason, right? The driver was inexperienced, never been outside, and maybe there is a pattern to it. Whenever somebody drives around in the places where there could be IEDs, maybe they have certain kind of a system where they can detect this place might have IED, so usually they avoid it, trying to drive through it. I don't know, that could be the reason. Otherwise, why would, they are constantly rearranging this vehicle, and that's the vehicle that's getting hit by IED every single time. So that means everybody else is kind of know that if somebody would to put IED, you've been that place and just, turning around it, right? And maybe getting lucky. Well, this kid doesn't know anything, obviously he's going to drive through it. Maybe that's the case. But holy shit, how good the vehicle is that it survived 3 IEDs. I didn't know the army vehicles were that good. I remember, reading about there were literally, IEDs and mine clearing machines that somebody made, right? The armies made, which has weird kind of, rotating stuff in the front, which is really armored up whole vehicle just to clear those, right? So that made me think that maybe it can't survive that many IEDs, maybe 1, but in second the car would just get destroyed. But it survived 3 IEDs, damn.
10 minutes later, guess what happens?
I don't
No,
know.
not
The
again.
Bradley gets hit with another IED.
Holy shit.
This one is so bad that it knocks out the comms in the vehicle, meaning that the driver can no longer talk to anybody else. The driver hits his head against the inside of the vehicle, gets knocked unconscious,
Whoa.
and the rest of the convoy goes, he's gotta be dead, and leaves.
The vehicle is still functional after being hit 4 times?
And they leave him, completely forgetting the first part of the Soldier's Creed. I will
Yeah, I will never leave a fallen comrade. What the fuck? What? How can they do that in real world, in real army situations? This shit like this, people are sometimes terrified to even think of going into army. Like, you're not supposed to do certain shit like this. You don't leave people behind like that. I mean, if it's I don't know, you're in some kind of a massive gunfight, and if there is no other option, you still call for backup or something. You don't just run away. Especially just, he hit by idea, fuck it, he's just dead, let's just move on. You don't do that shit, what the fuck? And I love his response was, the car was still operation after 4 IEDs, and he's like, no, that's not the point, man. Yeah, they just left him behind. So he was more concerned with the car than the guy.
never leave a fallen comrade. They just leave him.
Didn't even grab his dog tags?
No, nothing. The rest of the convoy just went, fuck it.
You can't
Drove
do
off.
that.
Driver wakes up. He's suffered a serious concussion. Doesn't know where he is. Doesn't know why he's in a Bradley by himself. Doesn't know where anybody else is, or why he's bleeding from the side of the head.
Jeez.
Can't reach anybody on the
God.
radio. The Blue Force tracker system is down, so he can't figure out where anybody else is. So he just starts doing the only thing he can think to do, which is drive up and down the main route all by himself, looking for the rest of his convoy, because he assumes there's no way they
Oh,
would
yeah.
leave me behind.
God
Why
damn
would
it.
they leave me?
Oh, the story's kind of dark.
Poor
Kinda.
19-year-old kid got left all by himself in the middle of Iraq because
Look, I'm not gonna lie, he woke up and he was bleeding from the side of his head. If he dies now by something like an infection, that's the entire squad's fault, the people who left him. I won't even call it the squad's fault. So probably commander, lieutenant, whoever is in the command, it's his fault. It's his job to give orders and make sure that nobody leaves behind. It's his fault entirely. So if he dies by, something like an infection or something, because he was bleeding out of his head and he was knocked unconscious there for God knows how long, right? It's their fault now. This is some bullshit.
his tank commander and his gunner decided they didn't want to be in a vehicle that got blown up anymore.
It seems so irresponsible to leave him there.
It was incredibly irresponsible of pretty much everybody in that convoy. The fact that not a single person went, why are we just leaving
Yeah.
Private Snuffy in this vehicle all by himself? I can
Snuffy.
only hope that the lieutenant or officer who was in charge of that convoy got his ass handed to him and got court-martialed and was never in a position of command ever again. It is incredibly reprehensible and is one of the reasons why I got out of the military.
One of the very many.
One of the many reasons.
I have a similar story. One time I was left in charge of guarding the toilets, and I used one of the toilets and I clogged it, and I had to unclog it, but we didn't have access to the supply cabinet, so I cleared it manually.
Oh, God! Just with your hands?
Yeah.
Oh, that's foul.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So it's kind of like the same thing for me.
Yeah, no, getting left by your
thing.
unit in Iraq to die is totally the same thing as having to clear a toilet with your hands.
We both suffered.
My main complaints are that most of the time the army was so disorganized and so...
Wait a minute, so let me get this thing. This guy is in the army, right? But this guy is in the Navy or something? Or they were in the Navy and Army? I know somebody said in comments that one guy's in the Army and one guy's in the Navy or something.
Stupid about what it would use its resources for. It was just infuriating to me.
Sometimes military incompetence can be funny.
Most of the time it's horrifying.
Yeah.
Our base sergeant major, while I was in Iraq, had the biggest hard-on for making sure that everyone still had their seatbelts on while they were driving military vehicles. He would sit
one of those people.
outside in a Humvee on one of the main routes and stop convoys that were not part of his command or even his jurisdiction.
Yeah, the people who basically thinks the rules and regulation is literally the Bible. I mean, they're not wrong, but sometimes they can take too much joy out of it, right? Like, oh, you're not following, regulations, you're not following this.
And walk up to each vehicle individually and make sure that everyone in the vehicle had a seatbelt on. This sergeant major would have his driver park the Humvee in the exact same spot every day. And eventually,
Well, that's
one of the
predictable.
local insurgents realized, hey, somebody parks a Humvee in this same spot every
Insurgent?
single day. And shot the gunner in the neck.
Oh, man.
The insurgents killed the seatbelt checker.
No, insurgents killed the gunner of the seatbelt checker because there's no fucking justice in this world.
Yeah.
Our base also had this big old blimp.
Now, what the fuck? Look, if you're operating in an area that could be, like insurgents would be running around that could attack you, that's basically not a safe zone, right? That's not a safe zone if that's the case. So if you're walking around something like that, you don't just do some regulations checking and shit like that and stop at the same spot. What the hell's wrong with that guy? That gunner's death is on his hand entirely. What the fuck? You should have known better. Why are you stopping the same spot every time to check people? But there could be clearly people just around you that are trying to kill you. You don't do predictable movements at that point.
With a multi-million-dollar digital infrared camera hanging from the bottom of it.
I'm sorry, did you say a blimp?
Yep, big old blimp. Like the Goodyear blimp, but a little bit smaller. Nobody could ride in it. It just had a very expensive digital infrared camera that could see long distances. Instead of using the blimp to look outside the base and see if insurgents were trying to blow us up, our base commander used the blimp to look inside the base to make sure people weren't going over the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit.
And make sure they were wearing their
This is
seatbelts. What a good use of resources.
Yeah.
And how can you do something like this in army? Whenever it's life or death situation and critical situation that army faces, this kind of incompetency is not acceptable, man. How can somebody like commanders and people in power do shit like this? If you have a probably extremely costly equipment like the blimp who looks for things, you use all the resources to make sure nobody gets hurt. Not to do your own fucking stupidity. Everybody's following 5 miles per hour speed. What is this, some kind of a city in USA? No, you're not in USA anymore. You're in Iraq. People are trying to kill you. Who gives a fuck if somebody's doing 5 miles per hour or not? Look for insurgents, man. What is this, a joke?
At one point, I was issued a belt-fed machine gun. I don't know why. I think probably because somebody in my chain of command was mad at me. So they gave me an M249 because they were like, fine, make him carry around this 13-pound piece of shit. I discovered on a firing range that if you use this machine gun while wearing Nomex shooting gloves, there was the potential that the glove could get caught in between the trigger and trigger guard, thus making the machine gun continue to fire even when you release the trigger.
What the fuck?
First, I actually talked to my chain of command and said, hey, this is really unsafe. Can I cut the trigger finger off of my Nomex glove so that I don't accidentally have a runaway gun and shoot somebody?
Was the Nomex glove issued to you?
Yes.
Ah, you can't do it then.
Well, no, they were issued to me, but the Nomex gloves are considered an expendable item. They don't expect them back.
Oh, okay.
And they said, you know what? That's a really excellent safety concern, specialist. Thank you for bringing that up to us. Why don't you go ahead and do that? And I went, okie dokie. So I cut the trigger finger off my Nomex glove. Well, a bunch of other people saw me running around with a glove that had one finger cut off of it. And they went, that looks cool. So they cut all the fingers off their gloves.
Oh,
Oh my god,
brilliant.
like that.
And then, literally the next day at formation, everyone got
Like that Undertaker's glove or something. That or fingerless gloves. Oh, that's cool. What is this, man? This is ridiculous. Talking about unprofessionalism at the highest.
yelled at because a bunch of people were going around cutting the fingers off their Nomex gloves. And their excuse was, yeah, but I saw Specialist Zach do it, so that means I can do it too. Specialist Zach had a legitimate safety concern. You guys are just frickin' idiots.
It's nice to have a story about your leadership that doesn't exemplify how stupid they were.
I felt validated.
Yeah, I mean, he was right to do that. I mean, machine gun, getting stuck, a fucking machine gun, a belt-fed machine gun, if it gets stuck, that's a way too big of an issue, right? Because it's a fucking belt-fed machine gun, it's gonna take time to run out of ammo. That is just fucking. This was horrifying. This story was horrifying, but interesting nonetheless. I like it. This is why I react to this guy, because you don't hear shit like this ever. But I can't believe the level of incompetency sometimes. People show at the areas like that, right, where you have to be very serious. You have to be very careful because people's lives are on the line. This is not a joke. How can you just leave somebody behind in your car? Like, oh, that is probably dead. What is this? Are you high? And using expensive equipment to look inside the camp if somebody's following 5 mile per hour speed. Who gives a fuck? Look outside. Is that insurgent there? Don't you want your convoy to be safe? What if 10 people dies because you want to look inside? What's wrong with you? How can people toy with somebody's life like that? You have to be incredibly stupid. Because I don't think that can be malicious in any way. I don't believe that. If somebody is in the army, nobody would knowingly think that, okay, people might die. 10, 15 of my people could die in a convoy. But you know what? I don't give a fuck about that. I'm going to look inside. Nobody would do that. Only thing I can think of, they were incredibly stupid. They didn't even thought of that. Like, I might need it to look for insurgents. I don't know. Alright, well, that was Campfire Stories, Bradley/Gloves. Okay, that glove part in the end makes sense. Let's have Mikeburnfire. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, check out the Rick Sunday. There's a link in the description. Check out the cards, we'll play the cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.